The pristine ivory dress lay across the chaise lounge, a beacon of broken promises. In the Sterling Hotel's luxurious bridal suite, Vivian Carlyle sat motionless, her carefully applied makeup now streaming down her face in dark rivulets. The bouquet of white roses and peonies had fallen from her trembling hands, petals scattered across the marble floor like abandoned dreams. What would you do if moments before your wedding you discovered a betrayal so devastating it shattered your world? The clock on the wall tickled mercilessly forward. Outside, 200 guests waited in anticipation, unaware that the fairy tale they'd come to witness had already crumbled behind closed doors. Have you ever had your heart broken so completely that you felt you'd never recover? That hollow ache that makes breathing itself feel like an impossible task? For Vivian, what should have been her moment of triumph had transformed into the most humiliating day of her life. The text message that illuminated her phone screen just 30 minutes before her walk down the aisle had brought her world crashing down. Her fiancé, Aaron Whitman, the man who had promised her forever, had been leading a double life with his business associate for months. "Miss Carlyle, the guests are getting restless. Your father is asking when—" The wedding planner's voice halted abruptly as she took in the scene before her. Vivian couldn't speak, couldn't move. How could she face everyone? How could she walk into that ballroom knowing her love had been nothing but an elaborate deception? But what happens when the most unexpected person steps in to rescue you from your darkest moment? Stay with me to discover how a billionaire's act of compassion changed not only a broken bride's future, but healed his relationship with his lonely son. In the hallway beyond the bridal suite, Jonathan Prescott stood frozen, his hand still raised to knock. He'd come looking for a quiet place to take an important business call, away from the wedding festivities of his business rival's partner. Instead, he'd stumbled upon raw human suffering, something that penetrated even his carefully maintained emotional armor. If you've ever experienced betrayal or witnessed someone at their breaking point, share your thoughts in the comments below. Has someone ever stepped into your life at exactly the right moment? Sometimes our greatest pain leads to unexpected new beginnings. The Sterling Hotel ballroom transformed into a fantasy landscape of white and gold. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over 200 ivory chairs, each adorned with fresh flowers and satin ribbons. Ice sculptures gleamed at the entrance. Two intertwined hearts that would soon begin to melt, an unintended metaphor for what lay ahead. The string quartet adjusted their instruments in the corner, rehearsing Pachelbel's canon one final time. "The champagne fountain needs to be higher," directed the head coordinator, gesturing to staff members who rushed to fulfill every command. "And those rose arrangements? Center them precisely on each table." This perfectionism was fitting for the union of Aaron Whitman, renowned financial analyst, and Vivian Carlyle, the talented architect whose designs had transformed the city skyline. Their wedding had secured a feature in next month's Elite Wedding magazine, a spread now destined for cancellation. 3 years earlier, Vivian had met Aaron at a charity gala. She'd been showcasing her architectural model for a children's hospital wing. Aaron had approached with genuine questions about her design philosophy. Their conversation lasted until staff began stacking chairs around them. "I've never met anyone who listens the way you do," Vivian had told him that night. Their courtship seemed plucked from a romance novel. Weekend trips to coastal towns, surprise lunch deliveries to her office, heartfelt letters when Aaron traveled for business. The proposal came during a private helicopter tour over the city, hovering above the building Vivian had designed. "Each structure you create brings beauty into the world," Aaron had said, opening the velvet box. "Let me build a life with you that does the same." The message had come from Rebecca, Aaron's assistant. "I can't keep this secret anymore. Aaron and I have been together for 7 months. He told me your relationship was ending after the merger with his company was complete. I only just discovered he's still going through with the wedding. You deserve to know the truth." Attached were photos. Aaron and Rebecca in intimate embraces, date stamped throughout their engagement. Hotel receipts. Screenshots of messages where Aaron described his strategic marriage to an influential architect whose connections would benefit his upcoming business merger. For 15 devastating minutes, Vivian had scrolled through evidence that her fairy tale was merely a business transaction, her fiancé a masterful actor playing the role of devoted partner. In the grand ballroom, whispers began circulating. The ceremony, scheduled for 4:00 p.m., was now 20 minutes delayed. Aaron stood at the altar, checking his watch with increasing frequency, his best man leaning in to whisper something that made his face drain of color. Vivian's father paced near the entrance, his phone pressed to his ear. "She's not answering. Something's wrong." Aaron's business associate, Marcus Denton, exchanged knowing glances with another board member. They'd structured the upcoming merger with the assumption that Aaron's connection to the Carlyle family would secure key architectural contracts. Outside the bridal suite, bridesmaids gathered in a protective cluster. "She won't come out," one whispered. "She just keeps saying she can't face them." Inside, Vivian had progressed from shock to physical illness. The elaborate hairstyle that had taken 2 hours to create now hung in disarray. She'd torn off her veil, the delicate pearl pins scattering across the floor. "Tell them to leave," she managed between ragged breaths. "Tell them there won't be a wedding." Their maid of honor knelt beside her. "Viv, what happened? What can I do?" But Vivian couldn't form the words to explain how completely her world had collapsed. The thought of walking into that ballroom, of seeing Aaron's face, of enduring the pity and curiosity of hundreds of witnesses to her humiliation, it was inconceivable. That's when the knock came at the door. Jonathan Prescott stood apart from the crowd, observing the increasingly anxious wedding guests with detached interest. At 62, his silver hair and commanding presence made him instantly recognizable to anyone in the business world. Forbes had placed his net worth at $4,800,000,000, 0 cents last quarter, a figure he considered an underestimation. He hadn't come for the champagne or the celebration. Jonathan Prescott never did anything without strategic purpose. Whitman Industries had been positioning itself to acquire Meridian Tech, a company Jonathan had been quietly planning to purchase himself. His appearance today was reconnaissance, an opportunity to gauge his competition's connections and allies. "You're thinking about work again." The voice beside him belonged to Lucas Prescott, his 35-year-old son, and heir to the Prescott empire. "We're at a wedding, Dad. Not everything is a corporate takeover opportunity." Jonathan's expression remained impassive. "Aaron Whitman doesn't invite competitors to his wedding without reason. Pay attention, Lucas. This is how you learn." Lucas's jaw tightened. "Right. Another lesson. Always what you want to talk about." The tension between them was palpable to anyone watching. 2 decades of expectations and disappointments had created a gulf neither man knew how to bridge. Jonathan had raised his son to be his successor after his wife's death, but where Jonathan saw necessary preparation, Lucas felt only constant evaluation. "I need some air," Lucas muttered, walking away before Jonathan could respond. The older man watched him go, a flicker of something, regret, perhaps, crossing his face, before his businesslike mask returned. The delay in the ceremony provided Jonathan the opening he needed. He could make his way to the East Wing, where the hotel's private offices would offer quiet for his call with Tokyo investors. The hallway leading past the bridal suite seemed the most direct route. That's when he heard it, the unmistakable sound of someone in distress. Jonathan hesitated. He had built his empire by staying focused, never allowing distractions, yet something in those broken sobs pulled at memories long buried. His late wife, Catherine, crying alone in their bedroom after yet another dinner he'd missed for business. The door was slightly ajar. Through the gap he could see the bride, her elaborate gown pooling around her like spilled moonlight, her shoulders shaking with each silent sob. The tableau struck him with unexpected force. "Miss," his deep voice carried into the room. "Do you need assistance?" When Vivian looked up, the raw pain in her eyes made Jonathan step fully into the doorway. He'd seen that exact expression once before, in the mirror, the day he'd realized Catherine wasn't coming back from the hospital. "I can't go out there," she whispered. "I can't face them." The bridesmaids looked at Jonathan with suspicion, one stepping forward protectively. "Sir, this is a private—" "It's fine," Vivian interrupted. Everyone please leave. I need a minute. To everyone's surprise, including his own, Jonathan didn't leave. Instead, once the room cleared, he pulled a monogrammed handkerchief from his pocket and approached cautiously, offering it to her. "Whatever happened, you don't have to face it alone," he said, the words emerging from some long-dormant part of himself. "Or at all, if you'd prefer. I can help you leave this place. No explanations, no audience. Your choice. This way." Jonathan guided Vivian through the hotel's service hallway, his hand hovering near her elbow without touching her. He draped his suit jacket over her shoulders, partially concealing her wedding dress. "My company keeps a private executive lounge on the top floor. No one will disturb us there." Vivian moved mechanically, her mind still processing the devastation of the past hour. The weight of 200 expectations pressed against her back, but with each step away from the ballroom, her breathing steadied slightly. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely audible. "I don't even know your name." "Jonathan Prescott." The elevator arrived with a soft chime. Inside, their reflections stared back from mirrored walls, the poised billionaire and the bride in disarray. An unlikely pair. "Prescott? Of Prescott Industries?" Recognition flickered in Vivian's eyes. "You're Aaron's competitor." Jonathan's expression remained neutral. "I am? Then why help me?" The elevator doors opened to reveal a handsomely appointed lounge with panoramic views of the city. Jonathan stepped aside to let her enter first. "Some matters transcend business," he said simply. The Prescott Executive Lounge occupied the entire northeast corner of the Sterling's 20th floor. Leather furnishings in deep burgundy contrasted with mahogany tables. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the river winding through downtown. Jonathan moved to a concealed bar and poured water into a crystal glass. "Drink this," he instructed, his tone more accustomed to boardrooms than comfort. Vivian accepted the water, her hands still trembling. An awkward silence fell between them. Two strangers connected by an act of unexpected mercy. "I should explain," she began. "You don't owe me explanations," Jonathan interrupted, his voice softened fractionally. "Whatever happened down there, it's your business. I'm simply providing an exit strategy." Vivian looked at him with surprise. In the past 3 hours, everyone had demanded answers from her. Her bridesmaids, her father, the wedding planner. This stranger's respect for her privacy felt like the first kindness in an endless day of cruelty. "He betrayed me," she said anyway, placing her diamond engagement ring on the table. "With his assistant. For months. The entire relationship was apparently a business arrangement to secure connections for his company's merger." Jonathan's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "Aaron Whitman has always valued profit over people. You know him well?" "I know his type." Jonathan moved to the window, looking out at the city he'd helped build. Men who view others as commodities rather than human beings. From the set of his shoulders, Vivian sensed there was more to his statement. Personal history behind his words. Before she could ask, her phone buzzed relentlessly with notifications. Texts from bridesmaids. Missed calls from her father. A message from Aaron himself. "Where are you? We need to talk." "Don't make a scene." A fresh wave of tears threatened. Vivian put her head in her hands, mascara staining her fingertips black. To her astonishment, Jonathan knelt in front of her. This powerful man, known for ruthless business tactics, produced a clean handkerchief and gently took her hands. "Today feels like the end of everything," he said, his voice carrying unexpected warmth. "It isn't. Trust me on this, if nothing else." "How do you know?" she whispered. "Because I've lived through my own endings." Something in his expression shifted, revealing depths beneath the stern exterior. "The question becomes who you choose to be in the aftermath." Vivian met his gaze, seeing not pity but genuine understanding. "I can have a car take you anywhere you need to go," he offered. "Or you can stay here until you decide your next move, whatever you need." Have you ever received kindness from an unexpected source just when you needed it most? Those moments when a stranger steps into your darkest hour with a helping hand? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes the people we least expect become our greatest allies when life falls apart. Time seemed suspended in the quiet sanctuary of the executive lounge. Vivian had washed her face in the adjoining bathroom, removing the streaked makeup that had marked her grief. She emerged looking younger, more vulnerable, yet somehow stronger, with her true face revealed. Jonathan stood by the window, phone in hand. "I've canceled my meetings for the afternoon," he said, tucking the device away. "No interruptions." "You didn't need to do that," Vivian replied, settling onto the couch. "I'm sure you have more important things than babysitting a runaway bride." A ghost of a smile touched Jonathan's lips. Multi-billion-dollar corporations can survive an afternoon without micromanagement, contrary to what my board believes. Something in his tone invited conversation rather than ending it. Vivian studied this enigmatic man, who had rescued her from public humiliation. "Why were you at the wedding? You mentioned your errand's competitor." Jonathan poured himself a small scotch from the bar. "Intelligence gathering. Your ex-fiancé, has been orchestrating a merger that conflicts with my interests." He paused. "That sounds cold-blooded, doesn't it? Perhaps I've been in business too long." "At least you're honest about your motivations," Vivian said. "That's more than I can say for Aram." 3 years, she continued. 3 years, believing I was building a life with someone who saw me as a business asset. Do you know what that does to your ability to trust your own judgment? Every memory is contaminated now. Jonathan sat across from her, his usual commanding presence softened. "I understand that feeling more than you might expect." "Because of your wife?" Vivian asked gently. Surprise flickered across his face. "Your wedding ring," she explained. "You still wear it, but the tan line suggests it's been many years." Jonathan looked down at his hand as if seeing the gold band anew. "Catherine. She died 20 years ago, cancer." He rotated the ring absently. "I was building my first billion while she fought her last battle. I was in Tokyo closing a deal when she—" He didn't finish the sentence. "Didn't need to. I'm so sorry," Vivian said. "I thought I was securing our future, our son's future." Bitterness edged his voice. "Instead, I taught Lucas that business always comes first, that people are secondary." The parallel wasn't lost on Vivian. "Like Aaron." Jonathan nodded. "I recognize his type because I was him, obsessed with empire building at any cost." Outside, the sun began its descent, casting long golden rays across the city skyline. In this gentle light, the hard lines of Jonathan's face softened, revealing the man beneath the billionaire facade. "What will you do now?" he asked. Vivian gazed out at the city. "I honestly don't know. My apartment is filled with wedding gifts. My firm gave me 3 weeks off for the honeymoon. The thought of facing everyone's questions and pity—" She shook her head. "It feels impossible." "What would you do if none of that mattered? If you could start fresh without concern for others' judgments?" The question hung between them. Vivian considered it seriously. "I'd take the commission in Paris I turned down last year. It was for a sustainable community center, my passion project. Aaron convinced me to stay for our wedding planning." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Another manipulation, I suppose?" Jonathan leaned forward. "Then go to Paris." "Just like that?" "Why not? You're free now. Painful as this day has been, you've been given an opportunity to reclaim your path." Lucas Prescott had spent an hour searching for his father. A staff member had finally directed him to the executive lounge. He paused at the threshold, hearing voices inside. Through the partially open door, he saw his father, but not the Jonathan Prescott he knew. This version of his father was listening intently to the woman in the wedding dress, his expression open and engaged. The commanding CEO who interrupted board members mid-sentence was now giving this stranger his complete attention. "I built my life on the belief that success and wealth were the ultimate goals," Jonathan was saying. "I'm worth billions on paper, but my son barely speaks to me except when forced. The irony is that everything I did was supposedly for him. Lucas froze, his hand on the doorframe. Have you told him that? Vivian asked. Jonathan shook his head. Words were never our strong suit, the Prescott men. We communicate through expectations and disappointments. Perhaps it's time for a different approach, Vivian suggested gently, before more time is lost. Lucas watched, transfixed, as his father's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. I wouldn't know where to begin. The beginning is always the hardest part, Vivian said. But from what I've seen today, you're capable of more kindness than you give yourself credit for. Lucas stepped back silently, deciding to return later. The man in that room was a version of his father he'd never witnessed, reflective, vulnerable, human. It was a glimpse of possibility he needed time to process. Inside, unaware of his son's presence and departure, Jonathan regarded Vivian with newfound respect. In the midst of her own pain, she'd seen through his carefully constructed walls and recognized the regret he carried. It seems we've both been given uncomfortable truths today, he said. Vivian nodded. Maybe that's where healing begins. Lucas Prescott stood at the window of his penthouse, tumbler of bourbon in hand, the city lights reflecting in the glass. The encounter at the executive lounge replayed in his mind. His father, the notorious, stone-faced CEO, as the business press called him, showing compassion to a complete stranger. He sipped his drink, memories surfacing unbidden. Dad, watch this. Young Lucas executed a perfect dive at the summer house pool. But Jonathan sat on the deck chair, attention fixed on his phone, merely nodding without looking up. Later that night, the Dennison contract needed immediate attention, son. The company supports hundreds of families. Their security comes first. Lucas proudly displayed his debate team trophy, Jonathan examining it briefly. Second place. The Prescott name belongs on first place achievements. You'll work harder next time. Business administration, a solid choice. Jonathan reviewing Lucas's course selection. I've arranged internships in every department. Within 5 years, you'll be ready for a vice presidency. Lucas's voice tight. I was thinking about architectural engineering, actually. Jonathan's dismissive wave. A hobby, perhaps. But your place is in the company. The bourbon burned down Lucas's throat as the memories faded. His father had methodically charted his entire life's course, without once asking what he wanted. Every achievement measured against impossible standards. Every minor rebellion quashed by reminders of the Prescott legacy. His phone buzzed. His father's assistant, confirming tomorrow's quarterly strategy meeting. Another day of sitting at the mahogany table, offering suggestions that would be politely noted, then ignored. His ideas, innovative, forward-thinking, are regularly dismissed as inexperienced or idealistic. Lucas set down his glass with more force than necessary. What had that bride said to crack his father's impenetrable armor? What magic words had she found that Lucas had searched for his entire life? Jonathan Prescott's mansion stood on 3 acres overlooking the bay, architectural perfection housing a profoundly imperfect life. In his study, he looked at the photographs arranged on his desk, fewer than might be expected for a life spanning 6 decades. Catherine smiling from their wedding day. Lucas at his graduation, their smiles equally stiff and formal. The Prescott Industries executive team at the NYSE bell ringing. Every image capturing achievement rather than connection. Jonathan opened his desk drawer, removing a worn photograph he rarely examined. Lucas, at 7, proudly holding a model skyscraper he'd built from craft sticks. The joy on his son's face, pure, uncomplicated. When did that expression disappear? He recalled Lucas's childhood dream of designing buildings rather than managing companies that acquired them. He remembered dismissing this passion as impractical sentimentality. His conversation with Vivian echoed uncomfortably. She had lost years to a man who valued strategy over genuine feeling. Jonathan had sacrificed decades on the same altar of ambition, losing his wife to death and his son to emotional abandonment. We communicate through expectations and disappointments, he had told Vivian. The truth of those words cut deeper now. His phone chimed. Lucas's brief message confirming his attendance at tomorrow's meeting. Formal, detached, professional. A relationship reduced to business transactions. Was it too late? The woman's words returned to him. The beginning is always the hardest part. Tomorrow's meeting will proceed as scheduled. The board would review quarterly projections, decisions would be made, business would continue. But for the first time in 20 years, Jonathan Prescott considered the possibility of a different agenda. One that couldn't be outlined in a PowerPoint presentation or evaluated for ROI. The seed planted by a stranger's insight began to take root. The Sterling Hotel had provided Vivian with a suite for the night at Jonathan's request. Morning found her at the writing desk, pen in hand, composing a message with clear, decisive strokes. Gone was yesterday's devastation, replaced by quiet determination. A knock at the door revealed Jonathan, impeccably dressed for his morning meeting. "You look better," he observed, noting her composed demeanor. "I feel clearer," she replied. Amazing what perspective a night's sleep can bring. She gestured to the papers before her. "I'm writing to the guests. A direct explanation of what happened and why the wedding was cancelled." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. Most people would have a representative handle such communications. Most people weren't publicly betrayed at their own wedding. Vivian met his gaze steadily. "I won't hide while rumors circulate. The truth may be painful, but it's mine to control now." Jonathan studied her with newfound respect. In business, he'd witnessed countless people crumble under lesser pressures. Yet here was this woman, rebuilding herself from the ruins of yesterday's collapse. "Would you like me to arrange anything else before I attend my meeting?" he asked. Vivian hesitated, then squared her shoulders. "There is one thing. I need to see Aaron." "Are you certain that's wise?" "It's necessary," she said firmly. "Not for him, for me. I need to end this properly, not as a victim who ran away." Aaron Whitman looked considerably less polished than the would-be groom of yesterday. His eyes darted nervously around the restaurant as he approached the table where Vivian waited. "Thank God you're okay," he began, reaching for her hand. "Your father's been—" "Don't touch me." Vivian's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Sit down, Aaron." He complied, face cycling through expressions. Concern, relief, wariness. "What happened yesterday was inexcusable," he started. "Rebecca should never have contacted you. She misunderstood our relationship. If you'd just let me explain—" "I've seen the photos," Vivian interrupted. "I've read the messages where you described our marriage as a strategic acquisition. Your explanation is irrelevant." Aaron's facade cracked slightly. "Vivian, be reasonable. We can work through this. The merger depends on—" "The merger," she repeated, a small, cold smile forming. "That's your primary concern, isn't it? Not the relationship you destroyed or the trust you violated." She slid a folder across the table. Inside lay legal documents terminating their relationship, financial entanglements, and shared property. "My attorney prepared these this morning. Sign them, and we never need to speak again." Aaron's expression hardened. "And if I don't?" "Then I forward Rebecca's evidence to your board, your investors, and that journalist from Financial Weekly who's been investigating ethical breaches in merger acquisitions." Her gaze never wavered. "Your choice." From across the restaurant, Jonathan observed the exchange while pretending to review documents. He couldn't hear the words, but the body language told the story. Vivian's straight back and unwavering focus. Aaron's increasingly desperate gestures. When Aaron finally signed the papers and left, shoulders slumped in defeat, Jonathan approached her table. "Congratulations," he said quietly. Vivian looked up, a single tear escaping despite her composed expression. "For what? Successfully ending my engagement?" "For reclaiming your narrative." Jonathan sat across from her. "Many people live their entire lives according to others' scripts." The statement hung between them, laden with personal meaning. Jonathan thought of his son, of the corporate empire built at the expense of genuine connection. "What will you do now?" he asked. "I called the Paris firm this morning. The position is still available." Vivian's expression lightened. They need an answer by Friday. You're actually considering it. More than considering, for the first time in years, I'm making choices based solely on what I want. She studied him curiously. Your meeting with Lucas is today, isn't it? Jonathan nodded, suddenly uncomfortable under her perceptive gaze. And will you continue your usual script? She asked gently. Or write a new one? The question lingered as he walked her to the hotel entrance. An unlikely friendship formed through crisis, yet somehow more authentic than relationships built over years. Thank you, Vivian said simply, for everything. Have you ever found strength after betrayal? That moment when pain transforms into power and you reclaim control of your story? Share in the comments how you turned a devastating setback into an opportunity for growth. Sometimes our greatest challenges reveal strength we never knew we possessed. The quarterly strategy meeting progressed with military precision. Executive team members delivered reports, analysts presented projections, and department heads outlined objectives for the coming months. Jonathan Prescott sat at the head of the table, ostensibly listening, but his mind repeatedly drifted to the conversation with Vivian. Mr. Prescott, your thoughts on the Asian market expansion? The CFO's question pulled him back to the present. Jonathan glanced at Lucas, seated 3 chairs down, his son's attention fixed on the presentation, expression carefully neutral. How many meetings had they sat through like this? How many opportunities to connect had been sacrificed on the altar of corporate protocol? Actually, Jonathan said, surprising everyone by closing his portfolio, I think we've covered enough for today. Let's reconvene next week. I'd like to speak with Lucas privately. The room fell silent. Jonathan Prescott never ended meetings early. As executives filed out with confused murmurs, Lucas remained seated, wariness evident in his posture. Is something wrong with the Meridian acquisition? He asked once they were alone. Jonathan felt the weight of that question, his son's assumption that only business would prompt personal attention. No, this isn't about Meridian. He moved to the chair beside Lucas rather than maintaining his position at the head of the table. This is about yesterday, about seeing you walk away at the wedding. Lucas stiffened. I didn't realize my brief absence was notable. It was. It always is. Jonathan studied his hands, uncharacteristically uncertain. I've been thinking about patterns, about how they form and how they might be broken. What patterns? Lucas asked cautiously. The one where I prioritize this, Jonathan gestured to the boardroom, over conversations that actually matter. The silence that followed felt electric with possibility and doubt. Why now? Lucas finally asked, his voice carefully controlled. Jonathan considered mentioning Vivian, but decided against it. This moment needed to be solely between father and son. Because I realized I've spent 20 years building a legacy you might inherit but never wanted. He met his son's gaze directly. I never asked what you wanted, Lucas. Not once. Lucas's expression flickered between suspicion and hope. You know what I wanted. Architectural engineering. Creating structures, not acquiring them. Yes, I dismissed it. The admission cost Jonathan more than any business deal. I was wrong. The simple statement hung in the air between them. In their 20-year history of complex negotiations and power dynamics, those 3 words had never been spoken. I don't know how to respond to that, Lucas admitted. You don't need to. Jonathan stood, moving to the window. But I'd like the chance to have a real conversation. Dinner, perhaps, not about quarterly projections or market share. Lucas studied his father's back. The straight posture that had never bent to anyone's will now seemed less rigid, more human. Dinner, he agreed cautiously. Tomorrow night? Jonathan turned, the relief visible only in the slight relaxation around his eyes. Tomorrow would be excellent. As Lucas gathered his materials to leave, Jonathan added, There's someone I'd like you to meet, eventually. A remarkable woman I encountered yesterday. She helped me see some things more clearly. The bride? Lucas asked, surprising his father. I saw you with her in the lounge. Their eyes met in shared understanding. both acknowledging there was more to discuss than could be contained in a boardroom conversation. "Yes," Jonathan confirmed. "Her name is Vivian." "You said 7 o'clock, Dad." Lucas checked his watch for the third time, trying to mask his irritation. Old patterns died hard, and his father's selective punctuality, always on time for business, chronically late for personal matters, ranked high among his frustrations. When Jonathan finally arrived, the surprise was not his tardiness, but his companion. "Lucas, this is Vivian Carlyle," Jonathan said, guiding her forward with a gentle hand at her elbow. "Vivian, my son, Lucas." Lucas rose, momentarily speechless. The woman before him bore little resemblance to the distraught bride he'd glimpsed in the executive lounge. This Vivian stood tall, her simple black dress elegant, her expression composed yet warm. "Ms. Carlyle," he managed, extending his hand. "I heard about what happened. I'm sorry you went through that." "Please, call me Vivian," she replied, her handshake firm. "And thank you, but I've found it was actually the beginning of something better, not an ending." As they settled at the table, Lucas noted the easy rapport between his father and Vivian. Jonathan pulled out her chair, something Lucas had never seen him do for any woman since his mother. "Vivian has accepted the Paris Commission," Jonathan explained. "She leaves next month to begin work on an innovative community center design." "Paris?" Lucas's interest piqued. "The Beaumont Foundation project?" Vivian looked at him with surprise. "You're familiar with it?" "I follow architectural innovation," Lucas admitted. "Sustainable design was my focus before," he glanced at his father, "before I joined Prescott Industries." "Lucas wanted to be an architect," Jonathan said to Vivian. "Something I discouraged to my regret." The candid acknowledgement, spoken in front of a virtual stranger, stunned Lucas into silence. By dessert, Lucas found himself engaged in the most stimulating conversation he'd had in months. Vivian's knowledge of architectural theory matched his own, her practical experience adding depth to concepts he'd only studied academically. "Your father mentioned you have quite the collection of architectural models," she said, eyes bright with genuine interest. "Just a hobby now?" Lucas responded, surprised that Jonathan had mentioned something so personal. "Lucas recreated the Fallingwater house when he was 15, Jonathan added, from memory, after we visited it once." The pride in his father's voice was unfamiliar, a tone Lucas had spent decades trying to elicit through corporate accomplishments, never realizing it had been there all along for the passion his father had dismissed. "I never imagined your personal collection rivaled the architecture museum." Vivian moved among Lucas's models displayed throughout the vast Prescott library. "These are extraordinary." Lucas watched her studying his work, oddly vulnerable under her discerning eye. "They're just personal projects. They're expressions of who you truly are," she countered, her fingers hovering over a meticulously crafted geodesic dome. "The precision, the attention to scale and light. There's passion here." Their eyes met across the room, a moment of perfect understanding passing between them. Both knew what it meant to set aside authentic desires for others' expectations. Both were now reclaiming those buried parts of themselves. "Will you show me your designs for Paris?" Lucas asked. Hours passed as they refined concepts together, Lucas offering insights that transformed certain elements of Vivian's design. Their hands occasionally brushed as they sketched, each contact sending unexpected warmth through both of them. "You should be doing this professionally," Vivian said quietly. "You have extraordinary talent." Lucas looked up, finding her face closer than he'd realized. "Perhaps someday." Something shifted between them, the collaborative energy transforming into awareness of each other not just as kindred creative spirits but as man and woman. Dinner became a regular occurrence. The formal dining room, unused for years, now held laughter and conversation. Vivian brought flowers, rearranged furniture, opened curtains to let light flood into rooms that had remained dim since Catherine's death. Jonathan observed the changes with quiet satisfaction. The house that had been merely an impressive structure was becoming a home again. More importantly, he watched his son come alive in Vivian's presence, the guarded executive replaced by an animated, passionate man. Paris is 2 weeks away, Lucas said, the night air cool around them. Yes. Vivian's voice held both anticipation and something more complex. I've been thinking about visiting Europe, he said carefully, for architectural research. In the moonlight, her smile bloomed. What a coincidence! I know an architect who could use a consultant. Their first kiss was gentle, questioning, then deepened with a passion neither had expected to find in the aftermath of their separate disappointments. The Prescott Estate's gardens burst with new life. Roses climbing trellises, hydrangeas framing stone pathways. The house itself seemed to breathe differently. Windows open to welcome spring air, light spilling across polished floors that no longer echoed with solitary footsteps. Inside, Jonathan reviewed documents in his study. Not quarterly projections or acquisition plans, but architectural renderings for the new Prescott Foundation Community Arts Center. The building's innovative design represented a collaboration between Vivian's sustainable vision and Lucas's passion for accessible public space. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Prescott, your 3 o'clock appointment with the board can be moved to tomorrow if you still want to attend Lucas's presentation in Paris via video conference. Jonathan didn't hesitate. Reschedule the board. My son's presentation takes priority. He closed the portfolio and moved to the window. 6 months ago, such a decision would have been unthinkable. The demands of Prescott Industries always claiming precedence over personal matters. Now, Jonathan measured success differently. Lucas stood before an international panel of judges, confidence evident in his stance as he presented the final designs for the Beaumont Community Center. Behind him, digital renderings showcased the project, his architectural vision, brought to life through Vivian's mentorship. The integration of communal spaces with private reflection areas creates a building that breathes with its occupants, he explained, his passion evident in every gesture. Architecture shouldn't simply house people, it should enhance their connections to each other. From the panel, approving nods. From the video screen showing his father's face, unmistakable pride. Later, as champagne flowed in celebration of the project's unanimous approval, Lucas pulled Vivian close, whispering against her hair. I never thanked you properly. For what? She asked, turning in his arms. For helping me find my voice, for believing in the architect I could be. Vivian smiled, the happiness in her expression containing no shadows of past heartbreak. You always had this talent. You just needed someone to listen. Jonathan raised his glass to the screen in a silent toast, his reflection in the window reminding him how much had changed. The ruthless CEO now understood that his greatest legacy wouldn't be measured in acquisitions or market domination, but in the relationships he had nearly sacrificed. He thought of Catherine, wondering if she would approve of the man he was becoming. 20 years late, but perhaps not too late after all. The Prescott mansion filled with guests for the first time in decades. Colleagues, friends, artists and architects gathered in the once austere home now warmed by Vivian's touches. Lucas in his new studio, creating models again. Phone calls from major firms requesting his consultation, turning his hobby into a respected professional voice. Jonathan declined a weekend merger meeting to attend an exhibition featuring Lucas's work, his assistant's shock giving way to understanding. Vivian put final touches on the Paris project, her design featured in international journals, her name no longer associated with a cancelled wedding but celebrated for innovation. To new beginnings, Jonathan proposed, raising his glass as golden sunset light bathed the garden. Lucas and Vivian joined the toast, their hands entwined. And to unexpected rescues, Vivian added with a meaningful smile. Sometimes life's most painful moments lead to our greatest transformations. A cancelled wedding, a father's awakening, a son's renewed passion. 3 lives forever changed by one act of compassion. If you've been touched by this story of unexpected love and healing, subscribe now for more real-life inspired tales of transformation. Remember to share in the comments how an act of kindness changed your own journey. Because the most beautiful stories aren't just the ones we tell, they're the ones we live when we open our hearts to new possibilities. Betrayal arrives without warning, shattering our carefully constructed worlds in an instant. For Vivian Carlyle, that moment came in a bridal suite, mascara-streaked tears marking the end of what she believed was her future. Yet standing here now, 1 year later, she understood a profound truth. Sometimes our deepest wounds open doorways to unexpected joy. The human heart possesses remarkable resilience. When Aaron's deception left Vivian broken at the altar, she couldn't have imagined that this devastating moment would eventually lead her to genuine love, that a stranger's compassion would transform 3 lives forever. For Jonathan Prescott, reaching out to a sobbing bride wasn't a calculated business strategy. It was a rare moment of pure humanity breaking through decades of emotional walls. That single act of kindness awakened something long dormant within him. The capacity to connect, to feel, to prioritize relationship over achievement. Jonathan and Lucas discussing plans over coffee. Vivian sketching designs while Lucas watches admiringly. The 3 sharing dinner and laughter. What appears catastrophic in the moment often reveals itself as necessary redirection. Vivian's cancelled wedding freed her to pursue her true passion. Jonathan's intervention gave him a second chance at fatherhood. Lucas found the confidence to reclaim his authentic path. None of these transformations came easily. Healing requires courage, the willingness to remain open despite past wounds. Trust built slowly, tentatively, through consistent actions rather than empty promises. Each small choice to prioritize connection over convenience, vulnerability over self-protection, gradually rewrote their stories. The most meaningful architecture isn't found in buildings, but in the relationships we construct. How we choose to rebuild after devastation defines us more powerfully than what broke us. Vivian discovered that her heart, once shattered by betrayal, could expand to hold deeper love than she'd imagined possible. Jonathan learned that legacy isn't measured in financial portfolios, but in moments of authentic connection. Lucas found that approval from within outshines external validation. Perhaps this is life's most profound lesson. Our greatest pain often precedes our greatest growth. The wedding that never happened created space for connections that changed 3 lives immeasurably. The business titan who seemed incapable of emotion found his humanity by extending kindness to a stranger. The overlooked son discovered his voice through unexpected mentorship, and a bride's tears of devastation transformed into tears of authentic joy. When life collapses around you, remember Vivian's journey. Remember that your broken moment might be the necessary breaking open that leads to genuine fulfillment. That compassion, both given and received, remains our most powerful tool for healing. And that love, when it arrives authentically, transforms not just individual lives, but entire worlds.